Welcome into Jets Nation Radio. I'm Goose, joined by Ray Howe as always. Before we get to him, always got to shout out our good friends at Betway. So if you're 19 plus in Ontario, go check out Betway. It's pretty darn cool. You can bet on the Jets anytime you want. And the Jets, they're looking pretty darn hot going into game 7 tonight. How are we feeling about the Jets there, Ray?
I'm feeling pretty good. It was kind of interesting to see the start of the season with the losses that they accumulated, but now they're showing the resilience to get the wins. So it's going to be interesting to see, and I think this game's going to be an important test with Detroit being off to a hot start to see how the Jets handle it.
Oh, 100%. You love to see, a big team like that. Because, the Jets were so close against the Vegas Golden Knights already this season and then just couldn't grasp the gold ring that they truly needed for that game. So hopefully we can take down one of the hottest teams in the NHL and one of the highest scoring in the NHL as of right now, too.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see, and it's really cool to see with that addition of DeBrincat and bringing in some defensemen, how quickly they kind of turned their season from last year, where they're kind of more of a bubble team. Maybe could have made the playoffs if they had a little bit more consistent goaltending. But now it's looking like they're really strong. They've kind of figured some things out and gotten some goaltending help as well. So it's not the same Detroit team as last year.
No, not at all. They finally woken up and everyone was questioning the Weiser plan. Well, boy, oh boy, is it here. And this is a big old test for the Winnipeg Jets. Has there been anything that's wowed you so far with the Jets this season?
Yeah, I think it has to be like again like the new players like and like kind of like the new lines like having Iafallo on that first line like again like with Mason Appleton when he was there, it really didn't work at all. But now you see Iafallo in there, and just how much of an impact he has, even though he's not the most skilled guy. And the commentators always say that he's going out there playing hockey, having fun, and he's gonna do everything for your team. And I think that's one aspect of the Jets that they didn't really have that type of player last year, where he was a player that's able to do everything for the team, whether it's being on the penalty kill, blocking shots, power play, and making an impact that high in the lineup. So, and having Kupari, I saw the post that the Jets made that he is the fastest recorded top speed in the NHL so far. And having that kind of speed in your bottom six and having that depth scoring is something that Jets have struggled with last year and in the past. And having those players hungry in the bottom six to make an impact is really going to have an impact this season.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, those three, or well, not so much Velarde, but the other two, fantastic starts the season. And Velarde, once he comes back from injury, boy, oh boy, this team is going to be just on another level.
Yeah, for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah. And I'm personally a big fan of Mark Scheifele this year. It looks like he's finally figured out how to play the 200-foot game. There's been a few times where he's been caught flat-footed as a defensive player, but he's looking so much more engaged and happy to be on the ice. I've said this time and time again over the summer, but if he plays this consistent game for 60 of the 82 games, the Jets are pretty much a lock to be a playoff team.
Yeah, and having an engaged Shifley is something you really need because if you look at the centers below Mark Shifley, like you're getting into Cole Perfetti, you're getting into Nemestikov. So, not saying that those centers aren't quality centers, but you really need to have Mark Shifley at his game because he's a true number one center in this league. And there isn't a lot of true number one centers in this league. And having a consistent Mark Shifley can easily have 90 plus points in a year. And having 90 plus points while you're playing with Kyle Connor and a Velarde or an Iafallo, those players are also going to have pretty good seasons. So having that impact that he has offensively, but now looking towards that 200-foot game, I think it's a kind of like a step in Mark Scheifele's game into becoming a more complete player, but also a player that can be relied upon for all aspects of the game.
Yeah. Good old Mark Scheifele this year. Is there anything concerning you with the Jets so far? Because it's like the Jets are 3-3, but have they truly played that game?
I think the Jets have played better than their record has shown. Like all their games have been relatively close, excluding that LA game. But one thing that's concerning me, it's kind of like a specific player. I haven't liked what I've seen from Nate Schmidt. Like there's been some times where I'm getting upset at the plays he's making. There was one play in just the most recent game where he tried forcing a pass to Mark Scheifele and it resulted in a breakaway for Kyrou. And I'm kind of doing that same kind of screaming at myself that I would be doing at Logan Stanley. And I didn't find myself doing that much with Nate Schmidt last year. And it may just be a bad couple of games from Nate Schmidt, but again, like I haven't liked what I've seen from him so far, and I think he really needs to turn it around.
Yeah, absolutely, he does. Uh, yeah, there's a lot of concerning plays from Nate Schmidt, and if this continues, it's going to be a long season. And I mean, like, it seems like the Jets are really just playing with a bunch of fourth and fifth defensemen right after Josh Morrissey. I mean, DeMello, he's probably a good fourth defenseman. Nate Schmidt, questionable if he's even a top six defenseman right now. Brandon Dillon, probably a fourth defenseman, fifth defenseman on most teams, but we don't have that bona fide number two defenseman like an Ekholm or an Adam Larson, someone like that.
Yeah, and even like a number three defenseman, like you need someone in that defense core, whether it's internal, like someone like Neil Pionk or Dylan DeMello, elevating their game to be somewhat of that level of a number two to number three defenseman. But again, like you look at say like a team like Tampa, they have their number one defenseman in Victor Hedman, but then they have that second option right there in Sergachev too. So you look at these top teams, they have their number one defenseman, but then they also have a defenseman right behind them that is equally as good or maybe not as good, but is still a quality top pairing defenseman.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of where I'm at with this team is like if they could find that bona fide number two or another number one defenseman, let's be real here. But like Cheveldayoff has to be willing to risk one of those young players. And I think the sooner you can get that that guy into the Jets organization, the better off we're going to be. So maybe you got to offload two of those prospects and Nate Schmidt in order to make that kind of a trade happen, and maybe even a first for next year. Like you might have to way overpay just to shore up the Jets defense at this point.
Yeah, and again, like if you're talking about a right-handed shot defenseman too, which the Jets would probably be looking for in that defenseman, like those don't grow on trees. Like those are the type of defensemen you draft, you develop yourself, and if you're trying to get one from a team, they're a valuable piece to that team, and they're not going to let them go for a price that you would be willing to pay. So I agree with you in that statement where they may have to give up a couple prospects, a Nate Schmidt, and a first round pick for that player because that player is probably also going to have term to their contract as well. It wouldn't be like a rental defenseman. It'd be someone that you would be bringing in to be that top pairing defenseman and to be that top pairing defenseman going forward as well.
You know, a guy that I love to rip on all the time as an Oilers fan is Darnell Nurse. But if you could figure out a way to get Darnell Nurse into the Jets lineup, actually, no, he's a left shot defenseman. Never mind. Get out of here, Darnell Nurse. I don't need to have
One
fantasies of
defenseman
you.
that I would love on the Jets right now, he's a Manitoba guy as well, but he does have trade protection, is Ryan Pulock from the Islanders.
Oh,
I feel like that would be like a perfect kind of pairing with Morrissey.
that would be fantastic. Yeah, and then if you had like a pairing of DeMello and Pionk, I think that you could manage that storm.
Yeah.
Because like those two don't have a terrible game, but like they haven't been great so far this season. DeMello's had a lot of mental breakdowns on the ice where I'm just like, oh, dude, you're so close to being great, but just weird flubs from that guy.
Yeah, and I think that's the number one thing on DeMello. Like I think it's he's having struggles with that consistency just because he's being relied on for so much. Like he's a player that's playing with Morrissey on those top pair minutes when he probably isn't a top pairing defenseman, but he's put in that situation. And obviously he's a great defenseman. He's doing very wonderful things. He's actually got a like really good amount of points for how soon we are in the season. I think he has like 6 points in set or 5 points in 6 games. And he's done really well up until this point, but there's kind of a limit to what Dylan DeMello can provide. And I don't think he like he may be like at his peak when he's playing to the perfect abilities that he has, is maybe a fringe third defenseman, but he isn't that second like number two defenseman on a team. And I think that's what the Jets are kind of relying on him to be. So I think that's where you see those flubs and you see those soft plays from the Mello. And it's not that he's a bad defenseman, but I think he's just being kind of relied on a little too heavily by the Jets.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, the Jets, if you could find that number two defenseman, would be fantastic. But let's just say they can't find a right shot defenseman. They have to settle for another left shot defenseman. Uh, and you lose Brendan Dillon in that kind of a package. Still okay with that? Like, at least then you have that secondary cover, I guess.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. Like they would have to be pretty good defensively, like be able to be on that PK. Somewhat, again, like I don't know the player that would fit that role, but it would be someone that I would want to be comfortable playing in all situations. Someone kind of like that Darnell Nurse that you say, where they can play him on the power play, the second power play, play him on the PK, play him in those tough minutes in against tough competition. So left shot defenseman wouldn't be the worst, but I would ideally hope for a right shot defenseman that you can pair with Morrissey.
Yeah. Yeah. The right shot defenseman makes way more sense. But yeah, those guys just don't grow on trees, unfortunately. Uh, Mark Chipman sitting down with Darren Drager at TSN saying the Jets are not moving on our watch. You got to feel pretty good about that, eh?
Yeah, I think that it really came as some good news to a lot of Jets fans where there was all these discussions in the news about the attendance and kind of the issues that may arise from this attendance. But I think Chipman really shored up the details of what they're experiencing and what their plan is going forward. Like again, you look at a team that had a lot of really good attendance leading up to a COVID, and they're still kind of seeing those impacts of COVID and maybe the impacts of not selling the corporate seats. So it's not just one issue that the Jets are facing in the seating. It's kind of two kind of issues combining into one issue that's resulted in the seating dilemma that they're in. But I think it's really nice to see that the confidence from Chipman, and I think it really shows that they have a set direction that they want to go down.
Yeah, and I mean, like the economics of Winnipeg are different than a lot of other NHL cities currently. This is a blue collar city. We work hard for our money. There's very few real corporate jobs. They do exist, but yeah, the folks of Manitoba and Winnipeg, we earn every dollar that we make. So it makes sense why seats are empty. Makes sense that, you know, there aren't a ton of corporate seats being sold. I also understand that True North and the NHL have a couple of ridiculous rules when it comes to seats in Canada Life Center. I don't understand the full economics of that or what those contract details are, but yeah, there's a multitude of reasons for why Jets fans aren't attending the games as much. And you kind of like, listen, I'm not trying to sympathize with millionaires playing a game, but you feel bad for those guys who definitely feel it when that rink is empty. I mean, they're performers. They just happen to get paid more money. They're, you know, I look at those guys as performing artists the same way I look at concerts. And even concerts here, my other job entails me going to concerts all the time. And since I started, I've watched Canada Life Center empty out more and more every night at every kind of rock show because, well, you know, there's been 1,000 of them this summer, but at the same time, it's you feel the economics in this city. So it's nice to see that Mr. Chipman isn't going to sell the Jets anytime soon or relocate them or worry about any of that stuff. I mean, he's got David Thompson, the richest man in Canada. We're not losing our team. But it's nice that he said, yeah, we'll stick around.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm very passionate about this, and I get sick and tired of guys from Toronto being like, you need to move them to Killarney because they'll actually succeed there. Yeah, piss off, you dweebs. um yeah, sorry, I'm a little fired up right now. What is okay, all the Jets have a goal song. What would your goal song be, Ray?
I think I'd have to go with a song that would really get people pumped up. And when I think of a hockey game, there's one song that really comes to mind, and that's Sweet Caroline by I forget, I think it's Neil
Neil
Diamond.
Diamond.
Yeah, and it's just it's a song that everyone can kind of get involved with, and everyone would be doing the bop bop bop. So I think that's the song I'd have to choose.
I love it. I mean, I'm just going old school Canadian. I want to go with Courage by the Hip. This is like gets me going. I don't care about anyone else singing to it in the arena. I'm fired up. So Courage. Shane Pinto suspended for 41 games, hasn't even signed a contract, didn't even bet on the NHL, and yeah, suspended. Even though his organization is sponsored by Bet99. Uh, also, Betway, please don't get mad at us for this one. I'm sorry. This is just relevant hockey news. But
Yeah, and
does
I
this
think
make
it's kind of
sense?
weird. Yeah, like the even like with the posts, like they're including the picture of Shane Pinto with the bet
Bet
logo
99,
on his
yeah.
helmet. Yeah. And again, like he's a young player. I think he's only 22 years old. And obviously, there's players can make mistakes at times. So I don't think it's something that should be held over him. Again, like he's going to have to sit out for this ban, like the suspension for the 41 games. And he'll definitely learn from that experience. And again, it's something that's unfortunate that has to be dealt with. Like you have to be responsible for the actions that you do. And I think that it's kind of like a learning lesson for Pinto, but also kind of players around that. Like if if players are to do kind of these things on the side that may be against the rules or violate the NHL, that there will be dismal, or I can't even say the word. There will be action taken against them if they are against those rules.
Yeah, I understand why you can't bet on yourself, but I really wish, and this is me being kind of dumb about it, but I would love to know exactly what guys are betting on. Like if they are betting on themselves to have a big night, like let's just say McDavid is like, I'm feeling it tonight. Here's 250 grand for me to score a hat trick. And it like you can't bet against yourself, but you can bet for yourself if that makes sense. I would love to see stuff like that. But yeah, like I don't know. It's dumb that he's suspended though, because he doesn't have a contract currently with the Senators. Uh, he didn't bet on the NHL, which even if he did, he's got no skin in the game, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I really hope that they figure out a way to appeal this one because it makes sense and it doesn't make sense at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue with it. Like again, like there's not a lot of known details on the matter. Like there is the suspension that was put in place, but like you kind of feel bad for him in a way where it's such a lengthy suspension and for something that is so kind of minor to some people. So it'll be interesting to see if it's appealed and what happens because he is an unsigned player currently and he must sign by December 1st. So it will be interesting to see if that changes any contract or any if he's up for trade as well.
So what actually changes here is that December 1st deadline is now null and void, but there are no current contract discussions going on between him and the Ottawa Senators. So he has to sign whatever the original offer was, which is significantly less money than what he was hoping for. And yeah, Shane Pinto unfortunately screwed himself. So hopefully he can figure out a way to just get himself to UFA status and then figure it out from there.
Yeah, I think he would have to sign his qualifying offer
Yeah,
at that
that's the
point.
term. Yes. So sorry there, Shane Pinto, that life is unfair sometimes. This segment was brought to you by Betway. I'm sure I won't get talked to about that at all. Ray, we got a few games coming up this week, but I want to know what your goal score prediction for tonight's game and who scores first for the Jets.
I think it's gonna be a 3-1 Jets win, and the first goal scorer I think is gonna be I think it's going to be Vladislav Namestnikov. I think that he's going to get I think we're going to see a pretty play from Ehlers and Perfetti again. But again, it's going to be an interesting game because Reimer seems to always have the Jets number for some reason.
You
So
know what? I was going through the numbers before this. James Reimer has very average numbers against the Winnipeg Jets. He just showed up for 2 games last year, and that we are all blinded by that because I was like, yeah, that dude beat the Jets twice. He lost 6-2 last year in one of the final games of the season. So yeah, don't believe the vague memories you have of last season. So Nemestikov, I'm calling a 5-4 game overtime loss for the Winnipeg Jets. Detroit just lost to Seattle in overtime, so I think that's how we're gonna bounce back. Jets got the Canadiens and the Rangers before we talk next Wednesday. What are we thinking?
yeah. I think they go 2-1. They win against the Detroit, as I mentioned. I think they will lose to Montreal and then they beat the Rangers.
Ooh. I'm calling 2-0-1. Blake Wheeler's going to have himself a game and score his first points of the season for the Rangers. But it won't be enough for them. So big win for the Jets there. And a win over Montreal should be pretty doable. I mean, Montreal's had a decent start, but I don't want to believe in them just yet.
Yeah, and that's if Blake Wheeler doesn't get scratched before the Jets game as well. He hasn't really had that much of an impact starting on the Rangers as
Hasn't
many would
done
think.
diddly. And I'm a little bit worried because I want to see that dude once in a Rangers jersey in this city, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Hey, where can we find you on the internet before we finish up this podcast?
Yeah, you can find me on the internet at ray.how on Instagram. And if you have any questions or anything you want to discuss Jets hockey here, you can always shoot me or Angus a DM and we'd happy to talk it over here.
Yeah, always send us DMs. We love your questions whenever we do get them in those few and far between times. You can find me, Angus Hout, on Instagram and X or Twitter or whatever it is, and jetsnation.ca. Go check it out. Evan is doing regular articles. I'm getting back into semi-regular writing. I know I promise it all the time, but this is the year, my friends. I'm gonna have a big announcement for everyone. Well, not big announcement, but it's an announcement either way. I'm very excited about that, and maybe even a second announcement if I can get a few things figured out this weekend, but I doubt it. But potentially, definitely one announcement, potentially two. So stick around. Make sure you like and subscribe to this podcast. Follow us. Have a great week, friends, and go Jets, go.
Go Jets, go.
And also peace and